You all ask me a lot what I think about MLMs, and sometimes I answer, and sometimes I say, wait, because I'm about to write that chapter. Well, here's some of what I've written. In chapter 10, it costs what to end my membership? About high entrance and exit costs. In my forthcoming book, The Culting of America. I'm Daniella, scholar of cults, extreme groups, and extremely bad leadership, and the author of Uncultured, a book about growing up in the Children of God religious cult, going into the cult of the U.S. Army. Okay. This is the lead-in vignette of the chapter. For the lonely stay-at-home mom, the idea of having her own business and being a #boss babe among a sisterhood of fellow CEOs all out to take charge of their own lives felt like a lifeline. She'd spent months in isolation, her days blending into a haze of diapers, bottles, and exhaustion. Suddenly, she was part of a vibrant sisterhood, weekly meetings, motivational Facebook groups, and a steady stream of colorful, feel-good messaging that told her she was more than just a mom. She wasn't just buying clothes. She was buying into a purpose, a community, and the promise of financial freedom. The upfront investment seemed like a small price to pay for a chance to build something of her own. For the career-driven woman stuck in a job that didn't value her, it was the promise of independence that hooked her. No more glass ceilings, no more being tied to someone else's schedule. She was going to be her own boss, building a business from home while proving to everyone that she could succeed on her terms. The initial costs were framed as an investment, not a risk, and she dove in headfirst. But as the time passed, the numbers didn't add up. Sales fell short of expectations, and the pressure to recruit more members turned into an endless hustle. It started to feel like no amount of work would ever get her ahead. The entrance costs to an MLM go far beyond the initial buy-in for inventory. MLM is multi-level marketing. New recruits are often encouraged or pressured to recruit their closest friends and family into the fold, turning personal relationships into business transactions. On top of that, there are mandatory events, summits, conferences, and retreats that promise insider tips, motivational speeches, and the chance to level up in the business. These events don't come cheap. Travel, accommodations, and ticket prices add up fast, but they're framed as essential investments in your success. Many attendees leave with little more than debt, a swag bag, and a vague sense of guilt that they're not working hard enough to make it all pay off. Meanwhile, the true cost, strained relationships, financial stress, and emotional burnout keeps piling up, making it harder to see the way out. For both our women and so many others, the realization came slowly but painfully. The system wasn't built for them to succeed, much like I write about in Uncultured, for women in the military. By the time they questioned the dream, they were already deep into debt, holding unsold inventory they couldn't afford to keep, but couldn't bring themselves to abandon. Worse, the sisterhood that once felt so supportive turned cold. Leaving meant not just financial loss, but social ostracism. And for many, the breaking point came too late, when dreams of success had already become a nightmare. Take LuLaRoe, for example. Oh, did I plan that? We'll never know. Where the promise of empowerment often left women financially and emotionally drained. Cult experts like Dr. Janja Lalich are calling MLMs commercial cults. I need to get an actual quote from her, though, because I don't want to use he who shall not be named. And honestly, it's not hard to see why. The math just doesn't math. MLMs promise financial freedom and the chance to be your own boss. But the reality is that nearly 99% of people who join lose money once you factor in all the products, fees, and endless promotional materials they're required to buy. We will put real numbers here. These schemes don't thrive because of product sales. They thrive on constant recruitment. The real money goes to the few people at the top of the pyramid, while everyone else is left scrambling to break even. Lalich explains that MLMs use classic cult tactics like love bombing, recruits, creating an us versus them mindset against critics, and rolling out thought-stopping cliches like, you're building your dream, to keep people emotionally hooked. It's not entrepreneurship, it's manipulation wrapped in a motivational package, designed to keep you hustling while the people at the top cash in. In every list teaching you to beware of cults, you'll find a reference to exit costs. And very rarely is it referring to money. Although we know cults are after that too. One of the reasons that both cults and the US Army love to remind you that you are free to leave anytime is because it's a subtle reinforcement of what the barriers to entry were, what it cost you to be there, and what you invested in time, money, labor, or other sacrifices to get that far. Are you really going to throw it all away because you don't like one of the newest revelations or regulations? In economics, this is referred to as the sunk cost fallacy, or the tendency to continue an endeavor after an investment in money, effort, or time has been made, sometimes regardless of what effects that might have on the future. Exit costs are everything you lose if you leave the group. Okay, and then I go into what are entrance costs, right? Blah, blah, blah. And that it's not always money. And then I talk again about MLMs, but back to entrance costs. Sometimes those entrance costs are cold hard cash. In MLMs, for example, you might spend hundreds or even thousands of dollars upfront to stockpile inventory before you can even start selling. Professional organizations can get you too. Some charge crazy membership fees for the promise of networking or career growth. Even churches sometimes expect financial commitments like mandatory tithes or love offerings to show your devotions. And it all feels like an investment, right? Like you're paying into something that's going to pay off later. But once that money is gone, the pressure to stay only grows. Because who wants to admit they dropped all that cash for nothing? So let me know what you think about the MLMs parts. Definitely, experts have been classifying them as commercial cults, and it's several things about the cults. I mean, pretty much all the things, right? They're always using deceptive recruiting, being like a big part of it, right? Like the math doesn't actually math. It's not, a business has to sell a product or a service. Pyramid scheme sells itself just over and over again, much like a cult. So we can learn a lot about them by at least putting them all in the same book and juggling it all around and seeing what comes out. At least that's my theory. Stay tuned.